All right, moving now to the Middle East, a ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas appears to be back on track today after hitting a last-minute snag. Israel's security cabinet voted to approve the deal. Now the deal goes before the full cabinet for a second and what will be the final vote. If it passes, the ceasefire and release of the first hostages could begin as soon as Sunday. But even with the ceasefire deal looming on all this, Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry says deadly Israeli airstrikes continued overnight. So let's go now to CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio, who is live for us in Tel Aviv. Ramy, thank you for being with us. That second cabinet meeting and vote will happen soon. What's the very latest from your end?
Liz, yes, good to see you. In fact, that second cabinet meeting is happening as we speak. The full cabinet is made up of 10 ministers, and it is expected to pass. This is the expectation going into it over the past couple hours. And I say that because it was already passed through the earlier security cabinet made up of 5 ministers. And that is despite 2 of those 5 ministers voting against this ceasefire and hostage deal. Those 2 ministers we knew had been causing political infighting in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right coalition. The National Finance Minister, Bezalel Smotrich. Bezalel Smotrich is the finance minister, as well as the national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir. Itamar Ben-Gvir himself has said that he would resign if the ceasefire and hostage deal went ahead. We're still waiting for that to happen. But let's say that they come out of this second meeting, this cabinet meeting, with an approval. There still is another hurdle to get through. This is in regards to lawsuits. Then over the next 24 hours after approval, potentially the families of Israeli hostages or people who have loved ones who have been killed by Hamas can then file lawsuits against the government to try to stop this deal from going forward. With that said, it is still expected that this will carry on. And if it does, the Prime Minister's office still does expect that the first hostages will come out of Gaza this Sunday.
I can't imagine what the families of these hostages have been going through the past few days. First, you get the word that there could be a potential ceasefire agreement. Then you hear about a snag, and now it looks like it's happening, but they're not quite sure when they could potentially see their loved ones. You've been speaking with some of the family members of these hostages. What do they tell you?
Sure. In speaking with these hostage families, it depends on who you talk to in terms of timeline, right? So because there is the phase 1 timeline of 6 weeks, then there's a phase 2 timeline of another 6 weeks. If you talk to the families in this first phase, sure, they're hopeful when they haven't been hopeful before, perhaps. But that is just this first group. For example, in the second group, which is made up of men and male soldiers, we spoke with one brother of a hostage family, and his name is Eli David. He was saying that it's a complicated feeling where he's happy for the first phase of hostages coming out. He says that they feel like his relatives, that they've all become this kind of community. But at the same time, he's still very fearful that his brother still has to wait, he said, underground for another 6 weeks before potentially he could come out. So there's this timeline of anticipation, of agony that will continue. And of course, we don't know how far it will continue because there are so many different moving parts that have to be fulfilled pretty much every week. The first group of hostages coming out on Sunday, if they do come out, said to be 3. Then 7 days later, it should be 3 or 4. Then 7 days after that, another 3 or 4. How can we make that step-by-step movement to the next while making sure it doesn't collapse?
And Ramy, some fear that this deal could still fall through, saying they'll believe it when they see it. So what will it take to keep this deal from collapsing again?
Sure. You know, I think we have to look through this through the political lens because First off, we know that the President-elect Donald Trump, of course, is going to be president on Monday, and it will be up to him, along with Israel and Hamas and other negotiating partners, including Egypt and Qatar, to try to continue to guide this deal through phase one, through phase two, through phase three, to make sure it doesn't collapse. I believe that it will require good faith and trust. With that said, even saying that, looking back over the past 468 days since October 7th, 2023, has there been good faith? Has there been trust? Of course, we know the answer is no. It's almost as if you try to look into a fog as you're driving down a road. You can only see so far ahead of you. The further you try to look ahead, it just becomes murkier and murkier. I believe that is where we are right now. I believe that we're going to have to take this day by day, week by week, to try to continue to corral all of the partners to carry on through to the next phase.
CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio live for us in Tel Aviv. Ramy, thank you so much for that insight.